the 2nd of July of 2025. The trial of Mr. Simon has continued, and in this video we shall be discussing and showcasing every single conversation had in the courtroom today. Before we kickstart this video, mind you, we'll be using illustrative pictures and videos to better portray our points. These videos and pictures are in no way, shape or form related or attached with the official court videos. With all of that being said, let's kickstart this video. Yes, just in case you don't know, Mr. Simon is facing the Biafraland District Court for a possible bail. Yes, his lawyer has applied for a fresh bail to the Biafraland District Court, and let's see every conversation had in today's court session. The court proceedings kickstarted at around 10 a.m. today. The presiding judge started the court session by stating, and I quote, "Good morning, everyone. The district court is now in session. We are gathered today to hear arguments related to the bail application submitted on behalf of Mr. Simon, who stands before this court. As you are aware, Mr. Simon has already undergone trial proceedings and now awaits the court's final decision on sentencing. The matter before us is not a trial of guilt or innocence, but rather a focused legal request concerning temporary release, one which must be examined with great care and without prejudice. In deciding whether bail is appropriate at this stage, the court must weigh several important considerations. These include the nature of the offense, the likelihood of the defendant appearing when summoned, the risk, if any, of further offenses, and whether the release might interfere with the course of justice. This is not a moment for theatrics or speculation. It is a moment for calm, structured legal arguments based on facts and the law as it stands. The right to liberty must be balanced against the responsibility of the court to uphold justice and protect the integrity of the legal process. It is this balance we seek to preserve here today. With that in mind, I invite the counsel for the defense to proceed with their submissions. The court will listen carefully before turning to the prosecution for their response. As you can clearly see or hear, this is a speech, like I said, rendered by the presiding judge asking the defense to present the application. But at this particular point in time, the prosecuting lawyer said he wants to speak first before Simon's lawyer, the defense, applies for a possible bail. The presiding judge granted him his permission to speak before Simon's lawyer, and the prosecuting lawyer states, and I quote, "Your Honor, the state respectfully urges this court to deny the bail application filed on behalf of the defendant, Mr. Simon. While the right to request bail is recognized under Finnish law, it is not an unconditional right. It must be considered in light of the gravity of the conduct in question and the broader implications of release at this stage. Mr. Simon is not an ordinary defendant. He has been lawfully tried and found culpable for actions which, though committed from Finnish soil, had direct and devastating consequences in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The court is already in possession of verified evidence establishing that Mr. Simon's activity used online platforms and digital channels operated from Finland to incite acts of civil unrest, destruction of public infrastructure, and targeted violence in southeastern region of Nigeria. These were not isolated expressions of opinion. They were repeated, deliberate calls to action, broadcast to large audiences, many of whom followed through with acts of violence, disruption, and fear. Let us be clear, lives were lost, communities destabilized, and government institutions undermined, all as a result of Mr. Simon's words and directives, spoken in Finland, executed elsewhere. The prosecution submits that this kind of transnational incitement is not only a matter of serious public concern, but also demonstrates a high likelihood of reoffending if Mr. Simon is granted temporary liberty. His influence remains active, his audience remains mobilized, and he has shown no indication of remorse or restraint. Furthermore, there is a real risk of interference with the justice process. Even if Mr. Simon's extensive online reach, his release could endanger witnesses, distort public discourse, or worse, reignite the very unrest this court has worked diligently to address through due process. Your Honor, bail is granted when it can be assured that the defendant will not pose a danger to the society, to the legal process, or to themselves. In this case, we respectfully argue that none of those assurances can be made. The prosecution, therefore, asks that the application for bail be firmly denied and that Mr. Simon remain in custody as the court proceeds towards sentencing. Thank you. And like I said, this is a statement coming from the prosecuting lawyer telling the court that, see, you shouldn't grant this man a possible bail. This guy might be a problem to the society at large. But then, Simon's lawyer stood up to counter every single statement made by the prosecuting lawyer. He states, and I quote, "Your Honor, I rise to respectfully object to the prosecution's argument opposing bail for my client, Mr. Simon. With due respect, the prosecution's statement is based on allegations that extend far beyond the scope of this bail hearing and rest on assumptions rather than established legal facts relevant to the criteria for pre-sentencing release. Firstly, the prosecution has made sweeping claims about so-called incitement to violence, attributing unrest in foreign jurisdiction directly to Mr. Simon, who happens to be my client. However, it is essential to remind the court that causation between speech and violence remains highly complex, and in this case, unproven in any Finnish court to a criminal standard. Secondly, Finland is a sovereign legal state with its own constitutional protections, including the freedom of expression and the presumption of innocence in matters where guilt has not been legally determined. The prosecution's attempt to paint Mr. Simon as a continued threat lacks solid evidentiary basis in this jurisdiction. Furthermore, there is no evidence before this court suggesting that Mr. Simon would abscond, interfere with witnesses, or obstruct justice if granted bail. He is a legal resident of Finland. He is a citizen of this dear nation and has complied with court proceedings so far and has offered strict conditions for release, including reporting requirements, location monitoring, and financial surety. Your Honor, bail is not a reward nor a declaration of innocence. It is a mechanism to ensure that a person can continue their life with dignity under supervision while awaiting the final outcome of legal proceedings. Mr. Simon, like any person under Finnish law, deserves the protection, especially when there is no credible risk posed by his release. For these reasons, we respectfully request that the prosecution's objections be dismissed and that Mr. Simon be granted bail under the terms proposed by the defense. Thank you. And this is a response from Simon's lawyer addressed to the prosecuting lawyer. At this particular point in time, the whole conversation in court got really heated. Yes, the prosecuting lawyer and Simon's lawyer started a wide-scale debate. Let's take a listen to what these guys had to say and the words exchanged. The prosecuting lawyer began by saying, "Your Honor, I must reiterate, this is not an ordinary bail request. The defendant, Mr. Simon, has used his residence here in Finland as a base from which to broadcast incendiary and violent rhetoric that has triggered real-world consequences in Nigeria. The court has seen evidence that death, destruction of public infrastructure, and public fear followed his online orders. Releasing him on bail now sends a dangerous message and risks more harm." Simon's lawyer responded by saying, "Your Honor, with respect, the prosecution is conflating political speech with direct criminal responsibility. Mr. Simon has not been convicted in Nigeria, nor has he been charged in Finland with a specific act of violence. The prosecution relies on assumptions and public reaction, not legal proof. Under Finnish law, that is not sufficient ground to deny someone his liberty." The prosecuting lawyer responded by saying, "Not legal proof. We have hours of video footage, multiple broadcasts, digital communications, where Mr. Simon openly calls for a sit-at-home orders and armed resistance. These messages had immediate effect. Attacks followed. It is reckless to suggest this court ignore such cause and effect simply because the violence occurred outside our borders." The defense lawyer responded by saying, "And yet, Your Honor, we must remind ourselves that Finland is not a satellite court for foreign states. We do not deny bail based on political pressure or external unrest unless there is clear, imminent danger within our own jurisdiction. Mr. Simon has remained in Finland, has not violated any local orders and rules, and has respected the court's process so far." The prosecuting lawyer responded by saying he has respected the court because he has no choice, but give him freedom and he has the tools, the audience, and the motivation to repeat the same conduct, possibly worse. The risk of reoffending is not theoretical. He has done it before while in Finland. What is to stop him from doing so again? The defense lawyer said, and I quote, "The court can impose strict bail conditions, house arrest, electronic monitoring, passport surrender. There are mechanisms to ensure compliance. Denying bail entirely on speculative fears without a conviction under Finnish law is contrary to the very principle of proportionality that underpins our justice system." The prosecuting lawyer responded by saying, "Speculative? The consequences of his words were not speculation for the families who lost loved ones in Nigeria. Finland cannot be a haven for individuals who stir violence elsewhere. Granting bail here would make a mockery of our responsibility to prevent abuse of cross-border communication." Simon's lawyer responded by saying, "With respect, Your Honor, we cannot begin denying fundamental rights simply because the defendant is unpopular or controversial. That is a slippery slope. Until there is a final judgment and a sentencing decision, Mr. Simon must be treated as a person entitled to due process, including the possibility of temporary release." At this particular point in time, the presiding judge had to step in and stop this whole debate between the prosecuting lawyer and the defense lawyer. The presiding judge asked Simon to step in and give or make a reaction regarding the bail application submitted by his lawyer. Simon states, and I quote, "Your Honor, thank you for allowing me to speak. I stand here today fully aware of the seriousness of the proceedings and the concerns raised against me. I want to say clearly and without hesitation that I respect this court, the rule of law in Finland, and the principles of justice that guide this country. It is not easy to sit and listen to my name being tied to violence, unrest, or harm to others. I understand the gravity of the claims made by the prosecution, but I must also speak the truth from my side. I have never, and I repeat, never called for violence against anyone. My words, my broadcast, my messages were expressions of concern for people who feel voiceless and unheard. I admit that my tone may have been passionate, perhaps even provocative, but my intention has never to encourage anyone to harm anybody. I reject violence, and I regret deeply if anybody has interpreted my words, my messages in any way, shape, or form in a way that led to chaos or destruction. That was never my aims, ambitions, or goals. Your Honor, I've lived in Finland for so many years. This is my home. This is my country. I'm a citizen of this dear nation. I've never tried to flee, and I have fully cooperated with every request of the authorities. I have no history of crime, no record of disobedience, and no reason to run. I am not a danger to the public, nor a threat to this country or any country of the world. I humbly ask for the chance to be with my family and to continue this process while on bail. I am willing to comply with every condition the court may impose. I only ask to be treated as a man, not as a symbol or headline, but as a person who still believes in the fairness and dignity. I trust this court to make a decision that reflects both justice and humanity. Thank you." And this was a passionate speech tendered by Simon himself. This particular point in time, the prosecuting lawyer said he wants to reply or react to the statements made by Simon. The presiding judge granted him his permission, and he states, and I quote, "Your Honor, with respect, I must respond to the statement just made by the defendant, Mr. Simon. While his words may appear composed and carefully chosen, they stand in stark contrast to his documented actions and prior public behavior. The defendant has asked the court to view him as a peaceful man, misunderstood and misrepresented, yet the record shows otherwise. The court is in possession of numerous video broadcasts where Mr. Simon made explicit calls for the civil disobedience, violent resistance, and armed enforcement of directives that had no legal standing, all disseminated from within Finnish territory. These messages were not abstract debates or expressions of opinion. They were strategic, coordinated, and targeted calls for action. Actions that resulted in loss of life, fear among civilians, and destruction in parts of Nigeria. Mr. Simon cannot distance himself from these consequences now by cloaking his rhetoric in language of concern or activism. He claims to respect these courts and Finnish law, yet He used the freedoms this country offers to foment instability abroad. This is not an excuse of free speech. This is a deliberate abuse of platform and privilege. If granted bail, there is no guarantee he would not continue to influence events across borders, shielded by the very same rights he claims to honor. Furthermore, Your Honor, regrets, if it's genuine, must be followed by accountability. Mr. Simon has expressed no remorse for specific outcome of his actions. Not once has he acknowledged the real human cost tied to his words. The prosecution maintains firmly and respectfully that releasing Simon on bail poses a significant risk to public safety and to the credibility of finished justice. His influence is far-reaching, his support base remains active, and his voice has already proven capable of inciting unrest. For all these reasons, we ask this court to view the defendant's statement not as a gesture of peace, but as a strategic attempt to escape the consequences of his own conduct. We urge the court to deny him bail in full. Thank you. And this was a statement, a full statement coming from the prosecuting lawyer, stating that it is a bad idea to grant Simon a possible bail. At this particular point in time, the defense lawyer stood up and asked the court, the presiding judge granting the permission to speak, that he has something to say. He has somebody to bring on. The presiding judge gave him his permission. He states, and I quote, Your Honor, at this time, the defense respectfully requests the court's permission to call a witness who is prepared to testify in support of Mr. Simon's bail application. The witness, a long-standing resident of Finland and an individual with direct personal and professional knowledge of Simon's character, intends to provide relevant and credible testimony regarding the defendant's behavior, ties to the community, and his willingness to comply with all bail conditions imposed by this court. We believe this testimony will assist the court in gaining a fuller, more balanced view of Mr. Simon's conduct within Finland and his reliability as a person seeking temporary release. Your Honor, the principles of a fair bail hearing allow for the presentation of material evidence, and this witness we submit will provide precisely that. Material support for the proposition that Mr. Simon is neither a flight risk nor a danger to public safety within this jurisdiction. We assure the court that the witness is present, available, and ready to testify under oath. Accordingly, we respectfully request the court's leave to proceed with the witness examination. And this is a statement coming from the defense lawyer at this particular point in time. A debate, a full and heated debate between the two different legal counsel occurred in the courtroom session. Yes, Simon's lawyer jumped on a full-scale debate with the prosecuting lawyer because he was trying to stop the presiding judge from allowing him to bring in his witness. Let's listen to the conversation between the defense lawyer and the prosecuting lawyer. The defense lawyer stated, and I quote, Your Honor, as previously submitted, the defense respectfully requests permission to bring in a witness who has personal knowledge of Mr. Simon's conduct and ties to the community in Finland. This testimony is directly relevant to the court's consideration of reliability, risk level, and potential compliance with bail conditions. The prosecutor stood up and said, Your Honor, the state strongly opposes this request. The introduction of a character witness at this stage serves only to distract us from the core facts of this case. We are not debating Mr. Simon's friendship or how he behaves in casual settings. We are only evaluating whether he should be released while awaiting sentencing, despite being the subject of serious findings related to incitement and cross-border instability. The defense lawyer responded by saying, with respect, Your Honor, the prosecution cannot both accuse my client of being a danger to the public and then object when we attempt to provide direct, personal rebuttal to that accusation. The proposed witness is not here to speak about casual matters. He's here to testify under oath to Mr. Simon's compliance with Finnish law. His presence in this court, his family responsibility, and his willingness to obey court orders. The prosecutor responded by saying, even so, Your Honor, this is not a trial of character. We must keep the focus on the risk factors identified by the court. Flight risk, likelihood of reoffending, and potential obstruction of justice. A friend or association testifying to Mr. Simon's personality cannot provide the documented pattern of online broadcast that led to real-world violence. That is what matters here, not personal opinions. The defense lawyer responded by saying, the prosecution wants to frame Mr. Simon as a threat, but opposes any effort to show that he is also a father, a resident, a citizen, and someone who has lived in our dear nation peacefully for years. The court deserves confidence in its evidence. It should have no fear of a truthful witness being heard. The prosecutor responded by saying, this is not about fear, this is about relevance. The state maintains that emotional or subjective testimony does not change the fact that Mr. Simon's voice incited unrest. Allowing this witness opens the door to theater, not legal clarity. The lawyer from Simon's camp said, let the court judge what is relevant, let the witness speak. If this testimony is immaterial, the court will dismiss it, but to silence it before it's even heard would be contrary to the spirit of open, fair, and balanced legal process. At this particular point in time, the presiding judge had to jump in and end the whole conversation. Yes, he was like, see, you guys are talking too much for just a possible bail application. In his own words, he states, and I quote, having carefully considered the submissions from both counsel, the court now issues its ruling. The defense has requested permission to call a witness in support of Mr. Simon's application for bail. The prosecution has objected on the grounds of relevance and potential distraction from the legal criteria guiding the court's decision. This court wishes to reaffirm that bail hearings, while distinct from full trial proceedings, are nonetheless guided by principles of fairness, balance, evidence that may assist the court in understanding the key considerations, including defendant's ties to community, likelihood of compliance with conditions, or broader conduct within this jurisdiction. The court must be open to hearing that evidence, provided is offered in good faith. The testimony of a witness who can speak directly to the defendant's character, stability, and behavior in Finland may indeed provide context that is relevant, even not determinative, to the court's evaluation of flight risk or public danger. Therefore, the court grants the defense permission to call the proposed witness. I will remind both counsel that the witness testimony must remain focused, factual, and directly related to the matter at hand. The court will not entertain political commentary or emotional appeals disguised as evidence. Defense counsel, you may proceed with the examination of your witness. Yes, and the defense lawyer started by saying, Your Honor, on behalf of the defense, I wish to express our sincere gratitude to the court for granting our request to present a witness in support of Mr. Simon's bail application. We fully recognize the court's responsibility to maintain fairness, order, and relevance in these proceedings. Your Honor's decision reflects not only a commitment to due process, but also to the broader principle that all parties should be given a full and fair opportunity to be heard. We assure the court that the witness testimony we intend to present will be focused, respectful, and aimed solely at assisting this court in its careful deliberation on the issue of bail. Thank you, Your Honor, for upholding the integrity and openness of this process. With your permission, we are prepared to proceed with the examination. At this particular point in time, the defense lawyer called in their witness to testify in favor of Simon. The witness states, and I quote, Your Honor, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is, he states his name, and I've lived in Finland for over 20 years now. I currently reside in Lahti, and I work as, he states his occupation. I have known Simon for over, he states the number of years, and we've interacted regularly, both professionally and socially, and I consider him a person of integrity and calm temperament. Throughout the time I've known him, Mr. Simon has shown respect for Finnish society, laws, and values. He has been actively involved in this local community and has always conducted himself in a peaceful and responsible manner. I have never known him to act violently, nor have I ever seen him or hear him express support for violence in any way, shape, or form. I understand the concerns raised in this case, but I can only speak to what I've personally witnessed. Mr. Simon is not a threat to society. He has a stable residence in Finland, strong social ties, and no history of attempting to evade legal responsibility. I believe with full confidence that if granted bail, Mr. Simon will respect any conditions imposed by the court and continue to comply with the process. I offer this testimony voluntarily and under oath because I believe in telling the truth and I believe Mr. Simon deserves the opportunity to await the next steps of his case outside of detention. Thank you, Your Honor. At this particular point in time, the defense lawyer informed the judge, the presiding judge, that he wants to examine the witness. The presiding judge granted him his permission, and the defense lawyer asked the witness, "Please state your name for the record." The witness stated his name. "Thank you. And how long have you lived in Finland?" the defense lawyer asked. The witness said, "I've lived in Finland for this amount of years." The lawyer said, "What is your current occupation?" The witness states his occupation. The lawyer asked, "Do you know the defendant, Mr. Simon?" And the witness responded by saying, "Yes, I do." The lawyer said, "How long have you known him?" The witness said, "I've known him for over," and he states the particular numbers of years. The lawyer said, "Can you describe the nature of your relationship?" The witness said, "We are friends and occasionally work together on community projects. We also met socially over the years." The lawyer said, "Based on your personal interactions with Simon, how would you describe his character?" The witness responded by saying, "Mr. Simon has always been respectful, thoughtful, and peaceful in nature. He speaks passionately about his views, but I've never seen him behave in a threatening or aggressive way." The lawyer said, "Has Mr. Simon, to your knowledge, ever endangered any criminal or violent activity here in Finland?" The witness said, "No, absolutely not. He's been law-abiding and responsible in every context I've seen him." The lawyer said, "Does Mr. Simon have any personal or family ties here in Finland?" The witness said, "Yes, he lives here and has family members and support system here in Finland." The lawyer asked, "In your opinion, if granted bail, would Simon comply with all court conditions and return for sentencing?" The witness said, "Yes, I believe he would. He respects the courts and he understands what is at stake. He's never shown any sign of trying to escape or avoid responsibility." The lawyer asked, "Do you consider him a risk to public safety or to justice process if we are released temporarily?" The witness answered by saying, "Not at all. In my view, he possesses no risk. He just wants the opportunity to face the next stage of his case from home, not from a cell." And the lawyer said, "Thank you. I have no further questions at this particular point in time." And this is a full examination between the defense lawyer and the witness. At this particular point in time, the presiding judge asked the court to go for a quick recess. They went for a quick recess, and after the whole short break, the presiding judge came in to say something nobody was expecting at this particular point in time. He says, and I quote, "After full deliberations and after listening to the both legal counsel teams and to the witness, it's only fair and just if Simon is granted a tentative bail. That is to say, we'll place Simon on the possibility of a possible bail subsequently. In our next court hearing, I shall be providing all the bailing requirements and conditions that Simon must meet before he'll be allowed to leave the premises of the correctional center." At this particular point in time, there was a quiet celebration in the courtroom session. The defense lawyer smiled, and Simon was quite happy because this is a big feat just accomplished by the legal counsel team. Yes, so by tomorrow being the 3rd of July of 20.
All right, lovers of freedom, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You're welcome to this YouTube channel. You know, this is the Intel TV News. This is where you get your legit information, raw data regarding what is actually happening in Finland. So it's a successful movement for us, the Biafrans, as we have successfully defeated the Nigerian zoo government in Finland. So it's a jubilation process for us, the Biafrans, because Martin Simon Ekpa bail application have been granted. So very soon, our Prime Minister will be with us, and he will expose all these criminal activities of this so-called zoo Nigeria Janjaweeds in Biafraland. Because the Lord we serve, Chukwu Okike Obioma, we serve, know that we, the Biafrans, we never watch these so-called Fulani terrorists take over our different communities in Biafraland. You can see the news we posted yesterday, and it's happening this morning. It's happening this morning in Imo State. So many communities in Olo have been invaded by these so-called Fulani headsmen. This is what we are fighting about. This is what we are talking about, and this is why you as a Biafran need to make sure that you spread all this information to our brothers and sisters in Biafraland, because it have always been their plan. it has always been their plan to take over some communities in Biafraland. That have always been their plan. This is what Simon Ekpa have revealed to us years back, and this is what Madina De Carlo have revealed to us years back. Now stay tuned for more updates and more information regarding the processes going on in Finland as you subscribe